built inside you, a pull to explain, to correct, to defend yourself. That's the moment most people lose everything. Not because they were guilty, not because the insult held truth, but because they reacted, because they felt the need to clarify, to clean the air, to prove their innocence or justify their presence. And in that single gesture, that very human reflex to protect yourself, you give away the frame. You admit, without knowing, that someone else holds enough power to put you on trial. Epictetus once said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." That's not just a lesson in self-control, it's a warning about perception. Because in the unspoken world of social dynamics, the person who reacts first loses. We're taught from a young age that when someone questions us, we should defend our name, our intent, our truth. That to remain silent is to be weak, or worse, guilty. But that's the illusion. In reality, when you defend yourself immediately, you validate the accusation. You accept the role of the accused. You shift the center of gravity from strength to explanation. And strength, once explained, becomes fragile. Power in its purest form doesn't flinch. It doesn't clarify. It doesn't chase approval. It radiates. And that radiation, that aura of control, begins the moment you stop reacting like everyone else. I once knew a man who understood this on a level few ever reach. He wasn't particularly tall, nor did he speak much. He wasn't the loudest in meetings or the most socially charming, but there was something in the way he carried himself. When someone would throw a veiled insult or a backhanded compliment, he didn't respond. Not with anger, not with sarcasm, not even with a smirk. He simply remained still, still in posture, still in energy, and the room would shift. Because when a man remains still, even his breath becomes a statement. The attacker begins to explain, not the accused. People start to wonder, why didn't he respond? Is he so confident he doesn't need to? Did the insult not even reach him? And in that wondering, in that unease, the crowd begins to reframe the story. Suddenly the attacker looks insecure. The silence of the one accused becomes louder than any defense ever could. And without saying a word, he wins. Seneca once wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity. For he is not permitted to prove himself." But the Stoic doesn't prove himself with noise. He proves it by not needing to. Think about how power operates in nature. The lion doesn't flinch when barked at by smaller animals. The ocean doesn't explain itself to the storm. Mountains don't apologize for standing too tall. Their authority is not in words, it's in presence. And presence is built not by being heard, but by being unmoved. Now apply this to the everyday traps we all fall into. A co-worker questions your ability in a meeting. You rush to explain your qualifications. A family member criticizes your decisions. You spill hours trying to justify them. A stranger online calls you arrogant, and you type paragraph after paragraph proving you're not. But here's the truth. The more you explain, the more you look uncertain. And the more uncertain you appear, the more authority you surrender. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." When someone seeks to trigger you, to reduce you to their level, your greatest victory is to remain untouched by their tactics. Not cold, not passive, but quietly sovereign. Let me paint a simple story. There was once a philosopher turned statesman who was constantly ridiculed by the public and his political rivals. They called him delusional, accused him of plotting, mocked his silence as weakness. Every morning he would walk through the forum with his head held steady, and every evening he left the noise behind without a word. His critics grew louder, more desperate, more theatrical, and yet he remained quiet. One day, a younger official asked him, "Why do you never defend yourself?" He looked up and said, "Because if they knew me, I wouldn't need to. And if they don't, I wouldn't waste the effort." That's the posture of someone who has chosen principle over performance. He understands that clarity is not owed to everyone, especially not to those who come looking for confusion. There's a particular kind of power that emerges when a man is misunderstood, and he lets it be, not because he's weak, but because he has nothing to prove. And in that restraint, people begin to sense something more dangerous than anger. They sense certainty. They sense depth. They sense that this man plays a different game, one where silence isn't empty. It's loaded. Loaded with presence. Loaded with mystery. Loaded with discipline. When you no longer speak in your own defense, your silence becomes a courtroom where others are tried without knowing. That wondering, that gap between accusation and your calm is where respect grows. Because the human mind, when denied explanation, fills the gap with its own conclusions. And often those conclusions are far more powerful than anything you could have said. But here's the challenge. The reflex to defend runs deep. It's instinctual. It's taught. It feels right. And walking away from it feels like giving in. So remind yourself, as the Stoics did, not everything requires a response. Not every judgment needs correction. Not every attack deserves a reply. There is power in restraint. There is mastery in silence. And there is a rare kind of dominance in letting your stillness become the final word. Because when you don't answer, they have to answer to themselves. And that quiet echo of their own doubt is often louder than anything you could have said. This is where we begin, with a shift in mindset. From reacting to commanding, from explaining to observing, from defending to defining. Because once you understand this first principle, that the reflex to defend is not strength but surrender, you are ready for the next truth. Whoever controls the frame controls the outcome. 2. Control the frame. Control the outcome. Have you ever been accused of something that wasn't true and still found yourself wanting to defend it? Maybe it was a quiet comment in a group, a sideways glance, or a subtle accusation like, "You're manipulative," or "You've changed." And even though you knew it wasn't fair, your instinct was to speak, to explain, to fix the story in their mind. But here's the paradox. The moment you feel the need to be understood, you lose something greater than clarity. You lose control. The Stoics taught us that external opinion is never truly ours to govern. Epictetus said, "If someone speaks ill of you and it is true, correct yourself. If it is false, laugh." But what if you didn't even need to laugh? What if your silence, your complete refusal to defend, said more than any rebuttal ever could? Picture this. You're in a crowded room. Someone lobs a subtle insult. You always think you're the smartest one here, don't you? All eyes turn to you. The expectation hangs heavy, but instead of defending, you simply breathe, turn your gaze with calm disinterest and reply, if that's how you see it. Then nothing. You don't linger. You don't flinch. You return to your calm, anchored presence. Now watch what happens. The room shifts. Not because you fought, but because you didn't. The one who threw the accusation begins to squirm. They were expecting resistance, a scene, something they could manipulate, but instead you left them holding their own hostility. And that silence, that serene, unshaken presence, it begins to speak volumes. That's what Marcus Aurelius meant when he reminded himself, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed." Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. You didn't just rise above the attack. You dissolved the entire frame it depended on. You see, people are rarely watching the facts, they're watching reactions. And in the theater of social perception, the calm man becomes the mystery. While others scramble to justify, explain, clarify, you sit still, and in that stillness, others begin to doubt the accuser instead. There's a man I knew who never defended himself. He was often the subject of gossip, judgment, even subtle sabotage. But he had a habit. He would never respond emotionally. When someone accused him of arrogance, he'd smile faintly and say, "Strange how confidence unsettles people." If they called him manipulative, he'd shrug. That's what people say when they lose control. And if they said nothing at all but tried to provoke him, he simply disappeared from the conversation. Over time, people stopped accusing him altogether, not because he won arguments, but because there were no arguments to win. He trained others to see that their words couldn't reach him. He lived beyond their approval, and in doing so, became untouchable. That's the power of reframing, not by words, but by presence. You don't fight their narrative. You let their narrative collapse from lack of support. And the moment they realize you won't play their game, they start questioning whether the game was ever worth playing. In relationships, this is even more profound. Imagine a friend or co-worker says, "You've changed." And there's judgment in their voice, like growth was betrayal. Most people would rush to explain, to say they're still the same, still loyal. But the Stoic doesn't explain evolution. He lets the other person sit with the discomfort of their own stagnation while he walks forward in silence. Then, with clarity, you answer, "That's not how I see it." Not cold, not distant, just certain. You give no defense because love isn't proven by performance. It's lived. And when you stay grounded in that truth, the other person is left with their own reflection. Often, they see their own insecurity, not yours. This is how you flip the frame, not by force, by letting them reveal themselves while you remain still. There's a deeper tactic few dare to use. It's not just silence, it's disappearance. When someone insults you, don't respond, don't post, don't clarify, don't retaliate, and don't block them either. Just leave them with your absence. Let them sit in the discomfort of being ignored. This kind of silence breaks people, not out of cruelty, but because most people depend on reaction to validate their position. When you remove that reaction, you remove their power. And with every post, every attempt to get your attention, they look more unstable, more desperate, more reactive, while you remain the unmoved rock Marcus spoke of. Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it. You become the frame, they become the noise. There was a time when someone slandered me publicly. It was online, calculated, designed to pull me into the mud. My first instinct was to respond, to show receipts, to clear my name. But instead, I went still. I did nothing. And over the next week, I watched as they kept talking, repeating, escalating. People began to ask, "Why is he so quiet?" And suddenly, the attacker's narrative didn't hold. Without realizing it, they had overplayed. Their emotional spiral became more visible than their original claim. Because power doesn't come from the truth being told. It comes from the perception being controlled. And silence, when used with clarity, controls the room without lifting a single finger. But here's where it becomes elite. You don't just ignore the insult, you turn it. Someone calls you arrogant. You reply, "Confidence unsettles the insecure." Someone calls you fake. You reply, "That's what people say when they stop getting what they want." These aren't counterattacks, they're revelations. You expose the insecurity behind their accusation, and you do it without needing to insult them. You simply state a truth that makes their claim unravel. This is the Stoic judo move. You use their force against them, not by resisting, but by stepping aside and letting it carry them away. Machiavelli called this the turn of the blade. Never meet an accusation with a shield. Let the attacker fall on their own sword. And when they do, it becomes clear to everyone that you didn't destroy them. They destroyed themselves, trying to destroy you. The world will tell you to defend your name, to clear the air, to prove you're not what they say you are. But the wise man knows. The second you try to prove you're innocent, you've already accepted guilt. That's the real game. The more you try to be seen as good, the more people sense your need. But when you stop explaining, when you accept misunderstanding and still walk with calm, people don't see you as misunderstood. They see you as powerful. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Most of your urge to defend comes from imagined damage. You believe if they think wrongly, you lose something. But the truth is, if you remain unmoved, you gain everything, because the one who needs no defense becomes the one no one dares attack. And when your presence carries more weight than any of their words, you no longer walk into rooms to argue. You walk in, and the room adjusts around you. In the next part, we'll explore the most ruthless strategy of all, the Stoic use of silence, not just to deflect power, but to create it, where your lack of response becomes a mirror so sharp it makes the world reflect on its own weakness. 3. The still gaze that breaks the room. Have you ever sat at a dinner table surrounded by people when suddenly someone takes a jab at you in front of everyone? Maybe it was disguised as a joke, maybe it was coated in sarcasm, but you felt the air shift, eyes turn. The room leans in, waiting. That moment where everyone silently wonders, how will he respond? Most people tense up. They chuckle awkwardly, say something to brush it off. Some explain themselves, trying to rescue their image, patch their pride, make things smooth again. But what they don't realize is this: by responding that way, they already confirmed the insult. They told the room, "Yes, that hit me," and just like that, the attacker wins. But the Stoic, the one who has trained himself to remain unmoved by insult or praise, he doesn't play that game. He knows what Epictetus meant when he said, "If you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, realize that you have compromised your integrity." He doesn't flinch, doesn't laugh along, doesn't even smirk. He simply pauses. 2 seconds of sacred silence, then a long, still gaze. Not angry, not defensive, just deeply calm, like a man who knows the storm will pass without him needing to lift a hand. The room feels it. They feel the strength that comes from non-response, and without a word, the attention shifts. Now the one who threw the insult begins to fidget. They fill the silence. They try to explain the joke, but it's too late. The silence already spoke, and it said, "You don't touch me." This isn't about being cold. It's about self-command. It's about refusing to give power to provocation. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." And this is precisely what these moments are, a test of strength in restraint. In the online world, things escalate even faster. A whisper behind your back, a misquote repeated just loud enough to reach your ears, a room full of people waiting to see if you'll take the bait. Most would feel the pull to correct the record, to restore the truth. But that impulse is what traps you. But here's the secret. When you respond like that, you lose the frame. Because once you reply, you acknowledge their authority to question you, and that alone shifts the balance of power. And the only thing you've proven is that their words had weight. A wiser move? Let your silence carry gravity. Don't reply. Don't block. Don't explain. Let the accusation die in its own echo. And if you must say something, make it short, sharp, and sealed in certainty. Someone says you're arrogant? You answer, confidence unsettles the uncertain. They call you fake. You answer, I never owed you truth. These aren't arguments. They're signals. Signals that you are not reachable through petty attempts. There's an old parable about a tiger walking through a village. Children throw stones. Some shout at it from a distance. The tiger does not roar. It doesn't turn. It keeps walking. Why? Because to roar would be to acknowledge, and to acknowledge would be to give the children exactly what they want: attention. The most feared presence is the one that moves through the noise without needing to respond to it. In the Stoic view, true composure isn't passive. It's the highest form of discipline. It's an active choice to let fools display themselves while you remain rooted. You don't use silence to escape. You use it to expose. When people throw jabs and you give them nothing back, no validation, no irritation, they begin to unravel. They keep pressing, escalating, reaching harder for a reaction that never comes. And with every attempt, they look smaller, more desperate, more unstable. And you become something else entirely. Not just calm, but untouchable. What most people don't understand is this: power doesn't come from being admired. It comes from being unreadable. If you're always explaining yourself, always clearing things up, always trying to be understood, you lose the very thing that makes you formidable: mystery. People can only manipulate what they can predict. But when you're calmly misunderstood, you gain an aura that no explanation could ever buy. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy, so when others lash out, when they gossip, when they try to bait you into their chaos, the true revenge, if we can call it that, is to rise above it completely. Not just in posture, but in presence. Because once people see that their words cannot move you, they stop throwing them, not out of kindness, but out of futility." Now let's talk about dominance, not in the loud, showy, ego-driven way, but the kind that quietly shifts the room without saying much at all. There are 3 tools to master this. First, silence, the purest display of control. Use it when words would only dilute your presence. Second, deflection, not argument, but redirection. If someone says, "You think you're better than everyone," you reply, "No, I just don't think like everyone." You're not correcting, you're reframing. Third, precision, short phrases that end the conversation. Someone mocks you in public, you meet it with, "Interesting take." Someone says you're full of yourself, you nod. That tends to bother the empty. These phrases don't invite more. They close the scene, and perhaps most importantly, never beg to be seen as good. Because once you start chasing approval, you start sacrificing truth. The man who is feared is not always loved, but he is respected, and respect is a far more durable currency than affection. Let them underestimate you. Let them talk. Let them try to provoke. Let them exhaust themselves. Your stillness will not just contrast their chaos, it will reveal it. And that's when the room begins to see the truth. Not because you fought, but because you didn't have to. That's the art of non-response. That's the power of silence held with presence. And it's the reason the Stoic doesn't collapse when the crowd turns, because he was never performing for them to begin with. And now, as we move into the next idea, ask yourself this: what would it take to build such a presence, one that doesn't need to speak, because the silence already commands the room? Let's explore that next. 4. Aura over armor. Have you ever met someone who didn't just command the room, but seemed utterly immune to it? Not because they were loud, not because they sought attention, but because they didn't need to speak at all. Their presence alone did the work. And you wondered, what makes a person carry that kind of weight? The Stoics would tell you it's not about what you say, it's about what you no longer need to prove. Seneca once wrote, "A great man is he who can be calm in the midst of chaos." And that calm, that detachment, is what transforms silence from absence into power. It's no longer about defense, it's about definition. A man who no longer needs to explain himself becomes someone others have to explain. Think of the people you quietly admire, the ones who never respond to gossip, who never rush to clarify a rumor, who never plead for fairness. They don't protest, they don't correct the record. And somehow, despite the absence of response, their name still holds weight. Why? Because when you refuse to engage with slander, you force others to fill in the blanks. And when the mind is left without an answer, it often fills that void with power. This is the moment when silence evolves. It's no longer a tactic. It becomes aura. Not emptiness, but an atmosphere. A force that surrounds you because you no longer stand in defense of yourself. You stand in command of yourself. And that's what the weak cannot comprehend. The average man hears accusation and feels the need to respond, to fix, to explain. But the Stoic lets it pass through him like wind over stone. He does not move, and because he does not move, others begin to orbit him. It's not detachment from reality, it's detachment from vanity, from the illusion that truth needs permission to exist. Marcus Aurelius warned us, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about you." So why chase approval from voices that don't see the truth? Let me give you a scene. A man sits at a meeting table while whispers about him echo around the office. One day, someone finally confronts him, hoping to expose or provoke. The room watches, ready for drama, but the man just looks up, calm, unmoved, and says with clarity, "I see. That's it." No denial, no explanation. The air tightens. The accuser suddenly feels the full weight of their words, hanging alone in the silence. The crowd, unsure what just happened, begins to shift their gaze. The attacker flinches. And the man. He doesn't need to win. He already did by staying still. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said the most dangerous man is not the one who attacks first. It is the one who never needs to. Because his restraint terrifies people more than aggression ever could. People know they cannot predict him. And unpredictability is its own kind of dominance. The Stoic doesn't seek to be feared, but he knows that being unreadable often achieves the same result. When they don't know how you'll respond, they hesitate. And when they hesitate, you control the tempo. This is the art of aura, the presence that doesn't just shield, but shapes the atmosphere around you. You don't earn it by pretending to be calm. You build it over time, stone by stone, by refusing to flinch when insulted, by holding your posture when tested, by saying less when others shout more. It begins with the smallest habits, never correcting an obvious jab, never reacting to indirect disrespect, never explaining something that was clearly meant to trigger you. You let them speak. You let them echo, and in that echo, they shrink. You answer indirect attacks with calm confusion, not offense. They say, "You've changed." You say, "Is that how you see it?" They say, "You think you're better than everyone." You say, "Interesting." Each answer ends the scene, not by power, by presence. Study how you sit, how you breathe, how your eyes move. The Stoic never twitches, never fidgets. He doesn't rush to fill the silence, because he knows silence reveals everything. The attacker's desperation, the crowd's judgment, the strength of his own center. Stillness is not passivity, it is armor. The more still you remain when others lose their grip, the more they realize they have nothing to hold on to. And that emptiness, it breaks them, because they expected a reaction, and instead they face a mirror, one that reflects only their own instability. This is the paradox. The more you try to prove your innocence, the more alone you seem, because when you're already explaining, no one feels the need to step in. But if you stand quiet, unfazed, others begin to feel the injustice on your behalf. They say, "Why are you attacking him? He didn't even respond." Suddenly, they become your defense, and you rise without ever lifting your hand. That's the kind of power Machiavelli revered. He didn't seek admiration. He sought elevation, a place above judgment, where the world no longer has the power to summon you to its petty courts. Because when you no longer need to explain yourself, people stop trying to put you on trial. You become untouchable, a law unto yourself. And the only verdict that ever mattered, you already delivered it in silence. So the next time you feel the urge to prove your worth, to clarify your name, or to win over a crowd that never knew you, pause. Ask yourself, am I guarding a reputation or embodying a reality so strong it cannot be questioned? Leave your thoughts below. What's one moment you chose silence over defense, and how did it shift the power? If this message spoke to you, consider subscribing. Not for the sake of numbers, but to walk this Stoic path together, step by step, silence by silence. True stillness is not the absence of noise. It is the presence of something greater, a strength so composed, so rooted, that even the loudest attacks fall silent before it. And while we've explored the philosophy behind this silence, it's time to see how it breathes through a living example. Because there was once a man who held the weight of an empire on his shoulders, yet never allowed public pressure to break his calm. He was surrounded by chaos, flattery, betrayal, yet he never rushed to defend, never chased applause. He ruled not just with law, but with dignity. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic not by speech, but by stillness. Let's walk with him now into the fire he never feared and the silence that made him immortal. 1. Marcus Aurelius, stillness that unnerves. Picture this, a great emperor draped in the weight of an empire, surrounded by whispers, betrayal, and unrest. Senators plotting, generals posturing, allies turning cold. And yet he sits quietly in the heart of it all, a man who knows that reacting to every wave only proves you're drowning. That man was Marcus Aurelius, and his greatest power wasn't in the legions he commanded, but in the restraint he chose. How does a ruler survive in a world that tempts him with revenge, presses him with accusation, and questions his every move? By mastering the one thing his enemies never understood, his mind. Marcus didn't rush to defend himself because he had already defended his peace. In Meditations, he wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it." He knew that the moment he allowed someone else's words to alter his state, he handed them his throne, not of Rome, but of self. There's a story, one you won't find carved into marble, but passed along like a quiet secret. One night, during a tense political rift, a senator publicly accused Marcus of neglecting the will of the people. The court paused, the room stilled. All eyes turned to the emperor expecting fire. Instead, Marcus lifted his gaze slowly, nodded once, and resumed writing in his journal. No rebuttal, no fury, no spectacle. That moment spread like lightning, not because of what he said, but because he said nothing. And yet somehow he spoke louder than anyone else in the room. The Stoic doesn't explain. He doesn't scramble to protect a name because his name is already anchored in virtue, not approval. Marcus understood this deeply. His silence wasn't submission, it was judgment, not of others, but of himself. He didn't measure power by the ability to silence enemies, but by the ability to remain unswayed by them. The reason this shook his enemies wasn't because he played politics better. It was because they couldn't read him. He became unreadable and thus ungovernable by their tactics. They whispered louder, tried harder, made more noise, and yet he remained still. And in that stillness, they unraveled. What they took for weakness was in fact dominance of the rarest kind. Inner rule. And what did Marcus gain from that? Everything. Because people don't trust the loudest man in the room. They trust the one who remains calm when the room is loud. And over time, those who once doubted him began to depend on him, not because he defended himself, but because his stillness became their compass. You see, in the storm of judgment and noise, the one who holds his center becomes the reference point for others. And Marcus knew this. He didn't try to convince the world of his strength. He simply lived in a way that made the world stop and reconsider its accusations. Imagine applying that in your own life. When someone questions your intent, when they misjudge your character, when the room leans in expecting your defense, what if you didn't give it to them? What if you let them watch your silence, feel the weight of your presence, and fill in the blanks with respect instead of doubt? That's what Marcus did. Not once, but consistently. Not for show, but because he'd already built the fortress within. The Stoic doesn't avoid conflict. He transcends it, not by running, not by hiding, but by refusing to be moved by what doesn't matter. And public opinion? That never mattered to Marcus Aurelius. What mattered was who he became in the face of it. He knew that every word you speak to defend yourself is a brick you place in someone else's frame, and every moment you stay silent is one more stone in your own. So when they speak against you, let them. When they twist your story, stay still. When they expect a rise, give them none. Let them panic in your calm. Let them doubt themselves in your clarity. Let them grow weaker trying to understand the one thing they cannot touch, your unshakable center. Because true presence, like Marcus Aurelius embodied, needs no defense. It creates the battlefield and wins before the battle begins. And now, let's move to a man who learned this principle not through philosophy, but through pure survival, and wielded silence like a blade sharper than any sword. Michael Corleone. 22. Michael Corleone. Silence is strategy. Have you ever sat in a room full of people and realized that the most powerful one wasn't the loudest, but the one who said almost nothing? The one whose presence forced everyone else to lower their voice, straighten their posture, and choose their words with precision. That is not charisma. That is strategy. That is a man who understands what it means to lead from silence. Michael Corleone was not born powerful. He didn't seek attention. He didn't crave dominance for its own sake. In fact, in the beginning, he tried to distance himself from his family's criminal empire. But when the moment came, when his father was nearly killed and chaos broke loose, Michael didn't raise his voice. He didn't explain himself. He simply stepped in, quietly, firmly, and the entire world shifted. This is where silence meets control. In a world obsessed with reaction, Michael chose restraint. He observed more than he spoke. He understood, as Epictetus taught, that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. And in that listening, in that studied calm, Michael didn't just gather information, he gathered leverage. There's a scene that defines him. After the attempt on his father's life, he visits the hospital late at night and finds it abandoned. No guards, no doctors, no police. Just his father, vulnerable and alone. Michael doesn't panic. He doesn't rant. He acts. He moves his father's bed. He stands outside with an empty hand in his coat, making enemies think he's armed. He stares down the chaos with stillness so intense it becomes its own kind of warning. That's the Machiavellian ideal. Not manipulation through words, but command through calm. Stoicism is not passive, it is precise. Seneca wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." Michael lived this. Every move he made was timed. Every silence was loaded. He did not react to insults. He did not rush to defend himself. He allowed others to reveal themselves, to unravel, to speak too much, while he remained composed. At the restaurant with Solozzo, when it's time to strike, Michael doesn't bluff. He doesn't justify. He asks to use the restroom, retrieves the hidden weapon, and returns, silent, focused, decisive. One moment of action without wasted emotion, no speech, no rage, just results. That is the Stoic way. As Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Even as he ascends to the head of the family, Michael does not become more talkative. He becomes quieter, more precise. The more power he holds, the less he says. Why? Because he no longer needs to prove anything. His presence carries the message. His decisions speak louder than any defense. But there's a cost. True power isolates. Michael loses his wife, his brother, his soul in the pursuit of protecting the family name. And this too is a Stoic lesson. Power without inner clarity can rot the man from within. Marcus Aurelius warned, "You can commit injustice by doing nothing." And Michael, in his silence, let certain betrayals fester. Yet even in his moral fall, his stillness teaches us something. That silence is not always virtue. That restraint must be balanced with wisdom, not just control. But in moments of power, when the world watches your every move, there is no greater shield than the silence of a man who doesn't need the world's permission. Michael Corleone did not just survive. He made others doubt themselves. He built an empire not by shouting orders, but by making every glance a message, every pause a statement, every silence a calculation. So, ask yourself, do you want to be heard, or do you want to be remembered? Because in the end, the man who commands the room isn't the one who speaks first. It's the one whose silence makes others listen. Let's now turn to a man whose presence was so unwavering, even betrayal couldn't shake his focus. Julius Caesar, the strategist who never reacted, only acted. 3. Julius Caesar, power in every step. Have you ever stood in the middle of rising tension, felt the eyes watching, the accusations swirling, and still chose not to flinch? Not because you had nothing to say, but because you knew silence would carry more power than speech ever could. That was Julius Caesar's art. He didn't just lead armies, he mastered presence, not with rage, not with defense, but with precise, calculated silence that made the world move around him. Long before he was declared dictator for life, Caesar understood something few men ever do, that reaction gives away power, that to defend is to descend, and that silence, when grounded in clarity, is not passivity, it's control. Seneca once wrote, "He who is brave is free." And Caesar's silence wasn't weakness. It was the ultimate expression of freedom. He refused to let his enemies, their words, or their judgments define his course. He let them speak, while he moved. Imagine the days leading up to his crossing of the Rubicon. The Senate in Rome whispers of treason. Old allies stir fear. They demand he return without his army, a public trap. a provocation dressed in protocol. But Caesar doesn't send letters of reassurance. He doesn't plead his case or call for negotiations. He moves, quietly, decisively. He crosses the Rubicon and utters the words, "Alea iacta est," the die is cast. One silent step redefines the empire. One refusal to justify changes the course of history. The Stoics would call this not rashness, but clarity in motion. Epictetus reminded his students, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. And that's what Caesar did. He didn't defend his vision, he built it. He didn't argue ambition, he manifested it. When rivals gossiped and feared, Caesar remained still until action was required. And when he acted, he didn't seek approval. He forced the world to reckon with his presence. Now think about your own life. How often are you tempted to react, to clarify, to fight, to argue your value in rooms where your presence alone should be enough? We're taught to fear misunderstanding, to chase closure. But Caesar teaches a different lesson. Let them misunderstand. Let them build their stories. Because when the time comes, you won't need to correct the narrative. Your results will shatter it. There's a lesser-known moment that captures Caesar's mastery of restraint. After a victory in Gaul, critics in Rome accused him of overreach, of seeking kingship. The city buzzed with rumor. Some warned him to defend his name or risk losing the people's favor. But Caesar remained quiet. He didn't debate. He didn't kneel. And when asked why he hadn't responded, he said, "Rome will see who I am when I return." That was his answer, not in words, in movement. This is not about arrogance, it's about self-governance. Marcus Aurelius later wrote, "Let men see, let them know, a real man who lives as he was meant to live." Caesar lived that before it was ever penned. He knew the court of public opinion was fragile, that to explain oneself to every whisper was to chase shadows. Instead, he walked as if his silence had gravity, and it did. Even in death, he remained composed. Surrounded by betrayal in the Senate chamber, he didn't scream, he didn't curse. He covered his face, not in fear, but in dignity. Because even as the daggers fell, Caesar refused to grant his enemies the satisfaction of seeing him beg. He died as he lived, commanding the room even in stillness. That's what people forget. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's the man who doesn't react, who simply raises an eyebrow, who walks in silence, who terrifies the most. Because silence cannot be predicted. It cannot be baited. It forces others to confront their own noise. In your life, there will be people who challenge your calm, who throw jabs to provoke your rise, who twist your silence into guilt. Let them. The Stoic doesn't react because he knows who he is. And when the moment comes to move, not speak, not explain, but move, he does so with clarity that cannot be debated. Julius Caesar didn't win because he argued his worth. He won because he never needed to. His silence became a mirror, reflecting the fear of his enemies and the certainty of his own direction. And in that mirror, every reaction became unnecessary. So the next time you feel pulled to explain your path, remember this. The man who acts with intention never needs defense. His results speak. His stillness commands. His presence decides the frame. And now, as we move forward, let's explore one final figure. Someone whose silence wasn't born from war or empire, but from inner mastery. A presence forged not by conquest, but by stillness in the face of death. 4. Queen Elizabeth, Grace Under Fire. Have you ever watched someone face relentless pressure, personal loss and public criticism, and yet remain unshaken, almost unreadable? Not because they were numb, but because they had mastered the rare art of composure. That was Queen Elizabeth II. A woman who reigned not through domination, but through dignity. Not through reaction, but restraint. In a world that often rewards outrage and demands explanation, Elizabeth's greatest strength was her stillness. She never rushed to correct the tabloids, never lashed out in speeches, never aired personal grievances. And yet, for 70 years, she held the center of a nation, sometimes even of the world. That's not luck. That's Stoic mastery in action. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." Elizabeth lived that truth. She didn't explain her values, she embodied them. Through wars, scandals, betrayals, and family crises, she stayed rooted. The crown never slipped, not because her world was peaceful, but because she carried chaos without letting it change her face. Think of the firestorm after the death of Princess Diana. The world waited for a statement. The media screamed for emotion. Accusations poured in of coldness, of silence. But Elizabeth didn't rush to meet the anger with more noise. She remained still, measured. She allowed the storm to roar, then stepped forward with grace. And in doing so, she reminded the world of something we too often forget. Emotion is not always loud, and strength doesn't always shout. What her silence offered was not detachment, but clarity. She understood what the Stoics taught, that your role is not to please every voice, but to play your part with honor. She remained steady not because she didn't feel, but because she refused to let feelings dictate her duty. There's a power in restraint, a royalty not born from bloodline, but from bearing. Elizabeth's rule teaches us that leadership doesn't need a spotlight to shine, and when the pressure mounts, the voice that doesn't rise may be the one most deeply heard. So when the world demands your reaction, pause. When criticism comes, don't explain too soon. Zeno taught that the voice of virtue is often a whisper. Loudness is for those still trying to convince themselves. Let your presence become the answer. Because in a world of noise, the person who remains still becomes the anchor, just like the Queen. 5. Vito Corleone, respect without words. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the presence of someone who didn't have to speak to be heard? Who didn't need to prove anything, yet everyone around instinctively moved with more care? That was Vito Corleone, a man who mastered the Stoic art of silent dominance. He didn't need to bark orders, he whispered. He didn't threaten, he promised. And yet the respect he commanded was deeper than fear. It was reverence. Epictetus once said, "The key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best." Vito understood this, but not just in friendship, in power. He surrounded himself not with flatterers, but with listeners. He didn't waste energy defending his name or correcting rumors. Instead, he made his name untouchable by acting in a way no one dared question. In every scene, every conversation, you saw the same posture: calm hands, soft voice, still eyes. But behind that stillness was an iron standard. A man so internally grounded that even betrayal couldn't rattle his tone. Think of the moment when a disrespectful guest speaks out of turn during his daughter's wedding. The Don doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't insult the man. He simply looks at him, slowly, deliberately, and allows silence to do what no threat could. That pause shifts the entire room. Why? Because power without reaction makes people nervous. They fill in the blanks with fear. They imagine consequences far greater than any punishment you could name. Vito Corleone understood this ancient Stoic truth, that it's not the man who reacts that's dangerous. It's the one who doesn't need to. The Godfather never had to prove he was in control. He never tried to be loved. He never chased after being seen as a good man. What he valued was something rarer, being seen as inevitable, like a storm you prepare for, even if the sky is clear. And that kind of power doesn't come from manipulation. It comes from self-respect, from knowing your value so deeply that no insult can cheapen you and no praise can inflate you. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Vito had no need to estimate. He knew, in your life, people will test your boundaries. They'll throw their voices at your silence, hoping to shake it. Don't let them. Like the Don, learn to sit still while others perform. Don't explain your strength. Let your presence define it. Let your word, when spoken, be the final word. And when attacked, ask not how to fight. Ask if it even deserves a reply. Because the truly untouchable don't block the punch. They make it pointless. So here we are, not at the end, but at the crossing. You've seen what it looks like to walk through life without needing to defend yourself. You've studied the men who let others react while they remain unmoved. The question is no longer whether this works. The question is, will you adopt it? You no longer need to justify your worth. Let your actions carry the weight of your truth. Let your silence be the blade that cuts through noise. Let your calm unsettle the chaos around you. And when they try to draw you out with accusation, let them tire themselves. The more they press, the more they expose their own unrest, not yours. If this message stirred something in you, share your reflection below, just a word, a thought, or a moment where you chose presence over reaction. And if you want to keep walking this path of clarity and quiet strength, consider subscribing. Not for the noise, but for the silence that builds power. You've seen how not defending yourself is the strongest move you'll ever make. Now go live it. Let the world wonder what you're thinking and fear what you're capable of. What do you do when someone twists your words, questions your worth, or turns cold without warning? Do you fight to be understood? Do you collapse inward, replaying every moment, trying to make sense of it all? Most people do, because we've been trained to believe that peace only comes when the world stops hurting us. But that kind of peace is weak. It's fragile. It depends on people being kind, situations going your way, and life playing fair. But what if real strength isn't about avoiding the chaos, but learning how to hold still within it? There's a kind of power that doesn't shout, a kind of clarity that doesn't need to convince anyone. The Stoics understood this. They knew that emotional freedom begins not when the world changes, but when you stop being shaken by it. Not through indifference, not through pretending, but through mastering the only thing that's ever truly yours, your inner world. This episode is not about being cold or distant. It's about something far more powerful, becoming steady, learning how to respond instead of react, how to stand even when everything around you pulls at your nerves and your heart. So if you're tired of feeling hijacked by your emotions, if you're ready to reclaim your stillness, stick around. You might just feel something shift. Number 1, stop needing, stop hurting. Have you ever noticed how much it hurts when someone doesn't text back, doesn't praise you, doesn't see you, and yet someone else could ignore you completely and you wouldn't feel a thing? Why? The pain isn't in their silence. It's in your hope that they'd speak. We aren't broken by the world. We're broken by our attachments to how we wanted it to be. The Stoics understood this with piercing clarity. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." Most people think emotional pain comes from the outside, from rejection, betrayal, disrespect. But those are just events. What makes them sting is our hidden craving beneath. The ego doesn't flare up because someone said no. It flares up because it wanted a yes. You don't suffer because someone criticized you. You suffer because you needed them to approve. There was once a man who lived for applause. He'd speak in meetings, then check faces. He'd give to others, then wait for gratitude. And when neither came, he grew resentful. But one day, sitting alone in a quiet room, he asked himself a hard question. What if I gave, not to be thanked, but because it was right? What if I spoke, not to be praised, but because the truth needed to be said? From that moment, something in him changed. He still acted, still gave, still spoke, but the need had dissolved, and with it, his suffering. This is what Stoicism teaches, not numbness, but mastery. The insult only hurts if you needed to be admired. The betrayal only cuts if you expected loyalty. When you stop expecting, when you stop seeking, the same moments pass through you without shaking you. The hurt doesn't land because there's nothing in you left for it to grab. It's not about becoming indifferent, it's about becoming rooted. You stop handing out your emotional remote control to every passing stranger. You stop begging the world to love you just so you can love yourself, and slowly you return to yourself, whole, undivided. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And this strength isn't loud. It doesn't bark back at insults or demand validation. It simply observes, understands, and chooses not to cling. So here's a practice. Take out a piece of paper. Write down the things that still have emotional power over you. Be honest. Is it being understood, being admired, being loved in a specific way? Write it. Face it. Then ask, who would I be without needing this? Imagine walking into a room not hoping to be liked. Imagine hearing criticism and not flinching. That's not coldness. That's clarity. That's not ego. That's liberation. When you stop seeking, the trigger loses its fuse. When you release the craving, the insult loses its target. That is the essence of emotional invincibility. Not a shield that blocks pain, but an emptiness that invites it in, sees it clearly, and lets it go without resistance. That's how the Stoic becomes untouchable, not because they feel nothing, but because nothing owns them anymore. They've stopped bargaining their peace for external scraps. And now, standing in the center of the storm, they are still unshaken, whole. Because the next principle builds on this silence, the art of responding without needing to win. Number 2, insults are only opinions. Have you ever been pierced by a single sentence, just a few careless words, and felt your whole chest tighten like it had been carved open? Not because the words were true, but because a part of you feared they might be. That's the trap. Not in the insult itself, but in how quickly we give it power. How easily we accept it as truth, without even pausing to ask if it deserves a place in us. The Stoics knew better. They understood that words don't hurt unless you let them settle. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." On the surface, it sounds naive, almost too simple, but it's a profound reclaiming of inner authority. Because most of what wounds us is not fact, it's opinion, a fleeting emotion, someone's projection, a story they told themselves, then handed to you. Imagine someone shouting at you on the street, calling you a fraud. If you're certain in your heart that you've acted with integrity, the insult rolls off like rain on stone. But if there's even a crack in your confidence, the words slip through. They echo, they shake something loose. And that echo? That's not them hurting you. That's your own doubt answering back. I knew someone once, quiet, humble, deeply kind, but the moment someone accused him of being manipulative, he unraveled, not because it was true, but because he had spent his whole life trying to prove he wasn't. That hunger to be seen a certain way, to be perceived as good, gave the insult its teeth. It wasn't the words that cut, it was the craving underneath. This is where Stoic practice changes everything. It teaches you to pause, to ask, is this a fact or just someone else's lens? And if it's not a fact, you don't swallow it. You study it like data. You learn if there's something to learn, but you never surrender your identity to someone else's emotion. Most people lash out not to speak truth, but to defend their own pain. They insult to feel tall. They attack to mask fear. What you hear in their voice is rarely about you. It's about the war they're losing within themselves. And yet, if you're not awake to that, you'll spend your life trying to be liked by people who don't even like themselves. You'll spend years trying to earn words they cannot give and believing criticisms they never had the clarity to examine. So here's the task. The next time someone throws a label at you, lazy, arrogant, unworthy, stop, breathe. Ask yourself, is this who I am, or is this who they need me to be in their story? Remind yourself that opinions are not verdicts. They're not mirrors. They're noise. And you don't have to let that noise become your soundtrack. You don't become untouchable by silencing the world. You become untouchable by refusing to absorb what doesn't belong to you. The most dangerous lies are the ones you tell yourself after someone else speaks. And the most powerful freedom is remembering you get to decide what enters your soul. Hold this line like a shield. Just because they said it doesn't mean I have to wear it. That's how you return to yourself. That's how you reclaim your peace. Because what comes next is even deeper, the hidden cost of needing to be understood. Number 3. Pain lives where ego clings. Why does a single comment linger in your chest for hours? Why does a passing insult, even from someone who barely knows you, feel like it struck something sacred? It's rarely because the words held truth. It's because they touch something your ego was protecting, an image, a title, a need to be seen a certain way. The Stoics understood this well. Seneca once said, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." But even as he acknowledged the harshness of life, he taught that suffering is magnified by how we interpret it. We don't just hurt because something happened. We hurt because our pride had something to lose in the moment. The ego flares when reality doesn't match the story we built around ourselves. I remember a man who worked tirelessly to be respected. He wasn't arrogant, but everything he did, every gesture, every decision was subtly aimed at maintaining an image. Competent, admired, always in control. One day, in a meeting, a colleague questioned his judgment. Not maliciously, just an honest critique. But he spiraled, he became defensive, cold, even bitter. Not because the feedback was cruel, but because it threatened the identity he'd invested so much in. The pain wasn't in the comment, it was in the collapse of his self-made image. And that's what the ego does. It convinces you that your worth is tied to perception, that if someone sees you as weak, then maybe you are. That if you're misunderstood, you must explain. But here's the Stoic truth. Your value isn't a mirror. It doesn't change with someone else's reflection. Confidence and ego often look the same from the outside, but they are worlds apart. Confidence is quiet and self-sustaining. Ego is noisy and dependent. The Stoic doesn't fight ego with more ego. He dissolves it by asking better questions. Not, how do they see me? But am I living in alignment with my principles? Not, did they approve of me? But did I act with virtue? Because once your sense of self depends on how others perceive you, your peace becomes fragile. Every disagreement feels like danger. Every silence feels like rejection. But when you remove that dependency, when you stop building your identity on applause, you begin to taste something rare: inner freedom. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Think about that. If someone mocks you and it makes you spiral, it's not the mockery that pierced you. It's your belief that your image must be preserved at all costs. So here's your quiet practice. Begin to notice where you feel most reactive. Is it when you're challenged, dismissed, ignored? Trace the reaction back to the belief: I must be seen as strong, I must be admired, I must be understood. And then ask, what if I didn't need that? What if you let go of the craving to be perfect, untouchable, always right? The Stoic doesn't become numb, he becomes rooted. You can walk through misunderstanding without explaining, through offense without collapsing, through rejection without seeking revenge. You don't lose your strength. You find it, finally, where it's always been, in your own hands. So if you're tired of being hurt by every careless comment, don't fight louder. Loosen your grip. Let go of the mask, the armor, the illusion. Ego dies when you stop feeding it, and in its place, real peace takes root. The kind that won't tremble just because someone else couldn't see your worth. And that's when the real transformation begins, when even chaos can't pull you off center. Let's explore that in the next principle: how emotional neutrality sharpens your clarity. Number 4, the trigger is your expectation. Why does one person's silence bother you so deeply while another's rolls off your back? Why does a stranger's rudeness stay with you all day while a friend's mistake is quickly forgiven? The answer isn't who they are. It's what you're attached to. The hurt doesn't come from what they did. It comes from what you expected. The Stoics were never naive about pain. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." And those opinions, those silent contracts we write in our minds, are what tie our emotions to the behavior of others. When you feel triggered, what you're really feeling is the resistance between what you expected and what actually happened. That's the tension. That's the spark. Imagine this. A man is cut off in traffic. His heart races. His jaw tightens. He yells into the air, furious at the injustice. But the car is already gone. There's no resolution. Only the echo of his expectation. People should respect me. But where did that belief come from? Who promised that every stranger would honor his space? No one. It was a silent attachment. And it's that attachment, not the car, that disturbed his peace. We walk through life wired to these expectations, that friends should reply, that partners should always understand, that strangers should be kind, and when they aren't, the alarm goes off. But the Stoic doesn't rush to turn off the alarm. He asks, why was it triggered in the first place? There's a difference between preference and attachment. A preference says, I'd like to be treated with kindness. An attachment says, if I'm not, I'll unravel. The Stoic lives with preferences, but holds them lightly. He doesn't cling to kindness, respect, attention. He welcomes them, but his balance doesn't depend on them. I once knew a woman who struggled with being left out. Every time she saw her friends hanging out without her, she felt rejected, less than, forgotten. But over time, through quiet reflection, she realized it wasn't their action that hurt. It was her attachment to being included, to being needed. That belief, if I'm not invited, I'm not valuable, was the real source of pain. And once she questioned it, she began to free herself. She stopped chasing inclusion and started nurturing her own presence. This is the path of emotional liberation. Not controlling the world, but detaching from the myths you built around it. You cannot control who texts you, who understands you, who praises or ignores you. But you can trace the tension back to its source, and every time you do, you cut a wire. You reclaim one more inch of your inner peace. The Stoic doesn't silence emotion. He studies it. He lets his discomfort point to his attachment. Then he loosens his grip, not to become indifferent, but to become free. So here's a practice. The next time something stings, pause. Ask yourself, what am I attached to right now? Respect, validation, control. Then ask, what if I didn't need that? What if your peace no longer hinged on being seen a certain way or treated a certain way? Who would you be? You'd be whole. You'd be grounded. You'd be free to respond with calm instead of reacting from fear. That's the beginning of mastery, not over others, but over your own inner weather. And from this space of quiet clarity, we can now move into the next principle, how detachment sharpens not only your peace, but your perception. Number 5, speak better inside first. Have you ever noticed how your day can be ruined before anything even happens? You wake up, check your phone, see something frustrating or nothing at all, and suddenly the voice in your head begins. Here we go again. It's going to be one of those days. But nothing outside of you has truly occurred. It's just your own mind, your own narration, setting the tone for a reality that hasn't yet unfolded. And that's where most people lose their calm, not in what life does, but in what they tell themselves about it. The Stoics knew the battlefield was internal. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations for an audience. He wrote them to himself, like armor forged in ink. Daily reminders to keep his thoughts steady, his judgments disciplined, his power internal. Because the moment your inner voice goes unchecked, you surrender your strength, not to events, but to the stories you attach to them. Imagine two men caught in traffic. One curses under his breath, convinced the world is against him. The other breathes, scans the sky, and says to himself, I'm being given time to think. Same situation, radically different experience, not because of luck, but because of language. Your inner dialogue isn't commentary, it's creation. It doesn't describe your life, it shapes it. I once knew a man who constantly undermined himself. After every small setback, his inner voice whispered, "You never get it right. You're just not good enough." And over time, those quiet sentences became his reality. Not because they were true, but because he believed them. It wasn't failure that held him back. It was the voice that narrated failure as proof of worthlessness. The Stoic interrupts that pattern. He sees the thought arise, harsh, self-critical, reactive, and he pauses. He questions it. Is this true? Is this helpful? Does this align with the man I want to become? And if not, he rewrites it. Not with fake positivity, but with grounded truth. This is difficult, but I have handled worse. This didn't go to plan, but I'm not here to be perfect. I'm here to grow. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And how you react always begins with what you say to yourself." That inner script is the trigger, the frame, the battlefield. If you let it run wild, you'll spend your life defending yourself from enemies that exist only in your imagination. But if you train it, shape it, refine it, it becomes your greatest ally. This is not passive acceptance, it's active authorship. You narrate your life deliberately. You learn to say, this challenge is shaping me. This delay is teaching me patience. This conflict is revealing my values. Each word, carefully chosen, becomes a step out of chaos and into control. So the next time you feel the surge, of anger, of anxiety, of doubt. Pause. Catch the sentence that sparked it. Maybe it's, "They're judging me," or "I'm going to fail." Hear it, then question it. Say, "I am not this voice, I am the one listening." And in that space, you'll find your freedom. You'll remember that mastery doesn't mean silence, it means sovereignty. With time and practice, your inner voice stops being your saboteur and becomes your guide. It becomes steady, calm, like a mentor walking beside you. It reminds you who you are, especially when the world forgets. And from that grounded state, you no longer react from fear. You respond with wisdom, because once you've mastered your own voice, no one else's voice can drown you out. And that leads us to the next Stoic lesson, how neutrality and perspective turn pain into clarity. Number 6. Stay centered, not superior. Have you ever walked away from an argument even after winning but felt strangely hollow inside? You proved your point, you said the clever thing, maybe even silenced the other person, but still, something in you felt off. That's because what you gained externally, you lost internally. And deep down, your soul knows the difference. The Stoic doesn't walk into conflict obsessed with being right. He walks in with only one aim: to remain anchored, to not lose himself in the storm of ego, pride, and impulse. Because the real victory isn't dominance over another, it's discipline over the self. Seneca once said, "A quarrel is quickly settled when deserted by one party." That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's clarity dressed in stillness. Most people enter conversations or conflicts with a hidden craving. I need to win. Win the last word. Win approval. Win validation. But the one who needs to win is the easiest to bait. One poke, one challenge, one misjudgment, and he's already spiraling, reacting, losing command of his state. The Stoic refuses that trap. He sees the bait for what it is and chooses differently. I once knew a man, sharp, successful, deeply respected. But every time someone questioned him, even lightly, he had to prove something. He couldn't let things go. He had to set the record straight. And with every defense, every need to correct or convince, he drained his presence. His energy scattered, his peace leaked out in fragments. He may have looked strong, but inside he was always at war. Now imagine a different kind of man, someone who hears an insult and doesn't flinch, who's misjudged but doesn't rush to explain, who sees a provocation and calmly chooses not to respond, not out of fear, but because he's anchored in something deeper. That man has mastered the rarest art, restraint. He knows that most battles aren't worth the energy. He guards his focus like a sacred flame. The Stoic asks, if I engage, do I gain peace or lose it? Because the one who always fights to win eventually forgets why he's even fighting. But the one who values peace over pride, he never gets lost. His compass is internal. His power isn't borrowed from applause or agreement. It's self-generated, unshaken, quietly immense. This doesn't mean becoming passive. It doesn't mean letting people walk over you. It means choosing your battles from a higher ground. When your actions come from purpose, not pride, you stay in command. And that's what Stoicism trains, the discipline to stay with yourself, especially when the world pulls you away. So next time you feel the urge to prove, to correct, to win, pause. Ask, am I doing this to stay true to my values or to feed my ego? One gives you short-term adrenaline, the other gives you long-term peace. Type centered in the comments if you've ever walked away from an argument just to keep your calm. And if you're walking this path of clarity and self-mastery, quietly hit subscribe. This space is for you, because the man who no longer needs to win is already free. He can't be manipulated, can't be baited, can't be knocked off course by noise. He doesn't just avoid chaos, he transforms it. And in the next principle, we'll explore exactly how your stillness becomes a kind of silent authority in the room. Number 7. Your silence is your edge. Have you ever felt the urge to respond instantly, to defend yourself, to correct the lie, to lash back at the insult, only to later wish you'd just said nothing at all? That quiet regret is the wisdom we often ignore in the moment. Because silence, when chosen deliberately, is not avoidance. It's power. And in the hands of a centered mind, it becomes a weapon sharper than any word. The Stoic doesn't measure strength by who speaks the loudest or argues the fastest. He understands that the man who holds his tongue holds his ground. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you always own the option of having no opinion. In that space of restraint, clarity emerges. Silence becomes not just the absence of sound, but the presence of inner command. Picture this. A man is accused falsely in front of others. The room watches, waiting for a response. He feels the tension rise, his pulse quicken, his mind preparing a rebuttal. But then he stops. He breathes. And instead of reacting, he remains still. He lets the words fall around him like leaves in the wind, and the one who tried to provoke him, they begin to shrink, because the moment passed and the man didn't. His stillness said everything. Most people underestimate silence because they mistake it for weakness. But silence isn't submission, it's selection. It's choosing not to waste your breath on ears that don't want truth. It's stepping back from a fire that would only burn your peace. The Stoic knows that some battles are best won by never entering the ring. When someone attacks you, they expect a reaction. They feed off your defensiveness. But when you respond with stillness, you reveal something unsettling, that they have no hold on you. You become a mirror, reflecting their chaos back to them without distortion. And in that reflection, they often see what words could never teach. Silence is not about hiding, it's about holding. Holding your ground, holding your clarity, holding your power when it would be so easy to give it away in the name of being understood. And it takes far more discipline to pause than to argue. Anyone can react, but the Stoic is trained in the pause because he knows it's where wisdom lives. Think of how many regrets are born in noise, how many friendships end, reputations are stained, and peace is shattered by words spoken too quickly. Silence avoids none of these realities, but it guards you from contributing to them. It gives you time to weigh your truth. It helps you see what's worth speaking into and what's better left to fade. A Stoic speaks when his words will serve, not when his pride is poked. His silence isn't coldness, it's preparation. It's listening deeply, watching closely, waiting patiently until the right word, the necessary word, arises with the full weight of intention. And when he speaks, people listen, not because he demands attention, but because he hasn't scattered his voice in every direction. In a world trained to overreact, your silence becomes rebellion. It becomes refuge. It becomes elegance. Because while others are busy proving themselves, you remain unshaken. You don't explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You don't offer your energy to noise that never asked for your peace. You let them speak. You let the chaos swirl, and you choose stillness. That stillness is not emptiness. It's precision, a sword sheathed, but always sharp. And when the moment comes to act, not to defend ego, but to uphold truth, you speak not to be heard, but to be felt. And that, more than anything, makes your presence unforgettable. Now, we step into the next truth, where detachment sharpens discernment and presence becomes your compass. Number 8. Choose peace, not every battle. How many times have you spent hours replaying a conversation in your mind, thinking of what you should have said, how you should have responded, trying to win an argument long after it ended? And for what? A comment made in passing, a jab from someone who barely knows you, a misunderstanding that won't matter in a week. That weight you carry, it didn't come from the world. It came from your decision to hold it. The Stoics understood this burden well. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You always own the option of having no opinion, and in that option lies power. You are not required to speak. You are not obligated to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't owe a reaction to every opinion thrown your way. Silence, when chosen with intention, is a mark of strength, not weakness." There was a man once who was constantly pulled into debates. Every conversation became a contest. Every disagreement demanded a defense. Until one day, after yet another exhausting exchange, he asked himself a question he'd never considered before. Why am I trying to win battles that don't matter to me? And in that moment, something shifted. He stopped engaging out of habit. He started choosing. Not everything that touched him had the right to enter him. Not every voice deserved an answer. And in that discernment, he found a peace he'd never known. The truth is, the more focused you become, the more precious your energy feels. The more you realize your time is not a public resource. You begin to see that many things, passive-aggressive texts, online criticism, sideways glances, are just noise. And responding to them doesn't make you strong. Sometimes it simply makes you scattered. Epictetus said, "When someone irritates you, it is not that person's actions that disturb you, but your own judgment of them." The Stoic doesn't waste time trying to change every perception or correct every slight. He knows the difference between what's urgent and what's important. He doesn't explain himself to those who never listened. He doesn't defend his name in rooms where truth is not welcome. Think of your energy as currency. Would you spend your most valuable resource on someone shouting nonsense in a crowd? Would you drain your peace to chase clarity from someone committed to confusion? Of course not. So why do we do it with our words, our presence, our attention, your life's work, your purpose, your clarity, your alignment requires protection. Every time you respond to a distraction, you step away from that work. Not all criticism deserves a counterpoint. Not all invitations into conflict are meant to be accepted. Your refusal to respond isn't silence out of fear. It's silence out of self-respect. So next time you feel the urge to react, to explain, to defend, to set the record straight, pause. Ask yourself, is this worth it? Or is this just bait? If it adds nothing to your path, let it go. Let them talk. Let them assume. Let the noise echo while you continue forward with calm. Because your stillness speaks. It says, I am building something far too important to be delayed by this. And the one who learns to walk past petty conflict with peace in his chest, that is the one who becomes untouchable. Now, let's take that even further. Because when you stop giving your energy to every distraction, something beautiful happens. Your presence becomes magnetic without effort. Number 9. Offense is a mirror, not a weapon. Have you ever felt wounded by a passing comment, only to later realize the person who said it didn't even mean it the way you heard it? That sting, that flush of anger or shame, it wasn't planted there by them. It was something that rose from within you. Not their intention, but your interpretation. That's the invisible space where offense is born. And it's also where it can die if you're aware enough to see it. The Stoics knew this deeply. Epictetus taught that between what happens and how we respond, there is a space. And in that space, we are free. Free to interpret, to judge, to decide. The world does not inject offense into us. It presents words, actions, events. What happens next is ours. We give things meaning. We breathe life into words by the stories we wrap around them. Think about the last time you felt offended. Was it a cruel remark, a cold silence, a dismissive tone? Now ask, was it really what they said, or was it what you thought it meant? That maybe you weren't respected, or included, or seen. That moment of pain often echoes something deeper, older. It's rarely about the present. It's about the wound it touches. There was once a man who overheard a colleague say something vague about people who never do their part. He stewed in it for days, convinced the jab was about him. His sleep suffered, his mood changed, until eventually he confronted the colleague, only to discover the remark had nothing to do with him. The pain, it wasn't from the words. It was from his assumption, his readiness to take offense. That's the quiet trap. We think offense is delivered like a blow, but more often it's self-inflicted. We pick up the comment, carry it home, replay it, assign it meaning, make it personal. But the Stoic learns to pause before picking it up. He asks, is this true? Is this useful? Does this deserve my energy? If not, he lets it pass like wind. Marcus Aurelius said, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. That's not about denial. It's about dominion. It's about realizing that your emotional state is yours to govern. No one else can define your worth unless you invite them into your mind and hand them the pen. There's immense strength in becoming unoffendable, not because you've built a wall around your heart, but because you've filtered what deserves to enter it. You stop letting strangers with wounded egos rearrange your inner weather. You stop answering every whisper with a war cry. You stop proving your value to those who've never seen it clearly. And when someone does try to provoke you, you recognize the game. You see the bait for what it is. Their words become arrows falling into water. No sting, no impact, just ripples. You walk on, untouched. Not because you're indifferent, but because you're focused. Because you know your peace isn't up for negotiation. So the next time offense knocks, pause. Ask yourself, what would it cost me to take this personally? And more importantly, what could I build with that energy if I let it go? That is the essence of Stoic power. Protecting your peace, not by shielding yourself from the world, but by sharpening your awareness of what truly matters. And when you stop taking offense, you don't just gain calm, you gain clarity. And in that clarity, you begin to see people and situations for what they are, not what your emotions paint them to be. That's the path we step into next, where detachment isn't coldness, but clear-sighted freedom. Number 10. Reaction is identity. What if your true strength wasn't revealed in moments of calm, but in the instant chaos knocks on your door? Imagine it. Something goes wrong, unexpectedly, sharply, and your instinct wants to scream, break, defend. But instead of reacting, you pause, just for a breath. And in that breath, in that tiny sliver of space between what just happened and what you will do about it, your entire identity is reborn. That space is your freedom. That space is your power. Life doesn't ask for permission. It moves, it breaks, it shifts. People disappoint you, plans fail, doors close, but none of it defines you unless you let it. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The event is not you. The betrayal is not you. The failure, the insult, the loss, that's just the raw material. You are the sculptor. You get to decide whether it turns into wisdom or weakness, virtue or victimhood." Let's take a moment and picture a man named Callan. He builds a business from the ground up, Years of sweat, sacrifice, missed birthdays, and silent battles. Then, one year, he's betrayed by someone he trusted, his partner. The business collapses. Everything he worked for is gone. People around him whisper, "Poor Callan." Life hit him hard. But Callan doesn't flinch, because long before this, he had built something more valuable than that business. He had built the habit of response. He grieved. Yes, he bled. But then he asked himself one question. Who do I choose to be now? That's the question that changes everything. Because most people say, I'm like this because of what happened to me. But the Stoic flips that. I am who I am because of how I responded. That's the core shift from being a passive product of your circumstances to being the author of your own direction. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." The trials aren't punishments, they're proofing grounds. Every hard moment comes with an invitation. Will you react, or will you rise? Will you echo the chaos, or will you embody the calm? It's not about pretending that pain doesn't hurt. It's not about faking strength or silencing emotion. The Stoic feels deeply but doesn't drown in it. He allows anger to pass through without acting from it. He honors grief without becoming it. He meets discomfort like a craftsman meets fire, not as destruction, but as a tool for refinement. You begin to realize that real strength doesn't mean having control over life. It means having command over yourself. You stop needing the world to be smooth in order to stay steady. You stop waiting for people to change so you can feel whole. Instead, you anchor yourself in response. You meet disrespect with stillness. You meet setbacks with discipline. You meet heartbreak with courage. And each time you do, you reinforce the quiet truth inside you. I am not what happens. I am how I respond. Think about the difference. If you are what happens to you, then your identity is fragile, always at the mercy of the next storm. But if you are how you respond, then your identity becomes resilient, a force that grows stronger with each wave. It's not about building walls. It's about becoming the kind of person who knows how to stand with clarity in any storm. The next time something hits hard, stop. Ask yourself, do I want to reflect this chaos or reveal my character? Do I want to mimic the noise or model the calm I claim to value? The answer won't just change how you handle this moment. It will shape the person you become in the next one. You are not your past. You are not the mistake someone made with you. You are not the unfair outcome. You are the moment you decided not to be defined by any of it. That is your sacred ground. That is where your freedom begins. And from that still point, we move forward. Number 11, be misunderstood and stay free. Have you ever felt the weight of being misjudged? That hollow ache when someone distorts your silence, questions your motives, or rewrites your story without ever asking for the truth. It's one of the most frustrating experiences, to feel unseen in your depth, misread in your intention, and unable to fix it without sounding defensive. But there comes a moment, a quiet turning point, when you realize the cost of constantly explaining yourself is far greater than the cost of simply being misunderstood. The Stoics called this emotional sovereignty. It's the freedom that comes when you no longer seek to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That's not just a call to integrity, it's a release from performance. When you live by your values, your actions begin to speak louder than any rebuttal ever could. The need to defend yourself fades, and in its place rises a deeper strength, the strength of stillness, of knowing who you are, regardless of what they say. Imagine a man, let's call him Elias. He works diligently, treats people with fairness, holds himself to a standard most won't even notice. But when he's quiet in meetings, they call him cold. When he sets boundaries, they say he's arrogant. When he stops chasing people who never respected him, they call him distant. At first, he tries to explain, to soften, to make himself more palatable. But one evening, after hearing yet another twisted version of himself, he does something radical. He lets them talk. He doesn't interrupt, doesn't defend, doesn't flinch. He simply leaves their words hanging in the air like smoke. And in that silence, he feels something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. That's the Stoic path. Not coldness, but clarity. You begin to understand that people often don't see you, they see their projections. Their own fears, assumptions, and insecurities painted over your image. And no amount of eloquence will change a mind that doesn't want to change. In fact, the more you explain, the more some will distort. Because for them, the version of you they've invented serves a purpose. It makes them feel smarter, more righteous, or simply less alone. The Stoic response is not to fight that illusion. It's to walk past it with grace. When you detach from the need to be seen a certain way, your energy is no longer wasted on appearances. You don't argue with rumors. You don't plead with false narratives. You don't offer explanations to those who never asked out of love. You simply become a presence too grounded to be shaken, too focused to be baited. This doesn't mean you live with resentment. It means you rise above the need to fix every false impression. You still live with integrity. You still treat others with respect. But your identity is no longer built on being accepted, admired, or even accurately seen. It is built on something far more stable: self-respect. You stop chasing closure. You become the closure. You stop performing for applause. You live in alignment with something more permanent than popularity: truth. Let them say you've changed. Let them assume you're cold, distant, aloof. Let them assign meaning to your silence. Their noise is not your responsibility. Their discomfort with your growth is not your problem to solve. When they twist your choices, misunderstand your stillness, or mock your boundaries, you don't respond to protect an image. You remain rooted in what you know. Because at the end of the day, when the crowd moves on to their next opinion, you will still be here, living your truth quietly, faithfully, and powerfully. That's not indifference. That's maturity. That's mastery. And when someone finally looks past the noise, they'll find not a person desperate to be seen, but a soul that chose peace over performance. So if today you're carrying the weight of being misunderstood, let it go. Let them talk. Let them assume. Let them invent their stories. You're not here to be explained. You're here to be lived. And that realization, that release, is what prepares you for the final truth. Number 12. Own it all, or be owned. Have you ever sat in silence after someone wronged you? Not just hurt, but hollow, waiting for an apology, an explanation, some justice that never came. You replay the scene, search their tone, wonder why they didn't care, and a quiet rage builds inside. But there's a deeper question beneath that pain, one few dare to ask. What if the freedom you seek doesn't come from their apology, but from your response? The Stoics taught that responsibility is the first step to emotional sovereignty, not the blame game, not self-condemnation, but the kind of responsibility that says, I may not have chosen the wound, but I will choose what it makes of me. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." And what is friction, if not the misunderstandings, betrayals, and injustices that press into your spirit, daring you to react or rise? Imagine a man who was betrayed by his closest friend. Everything in him screams to lash out, to correct the story, to make sure everyone knows the truth. But instead, he retreats, not to hide, but to realign. He lets himself feel the pain, but he refuses to become the bitterness. He does not let someone else's failure become his identity. That is radical responsibility. That is power reclaimed. You see, most people live their lives emotionally outsourced. She ruined my day. He made me angry. They took my peace. But the Stoic knows no one can take what you never handed over. When you say, "They made me feel this way," you've already surrendered authorship of your emotional life. You've given them the pen and let them write your story. But what if you didn't? What if, the next time life provoked you, you paused and asked, "What is this teaching me about me?" That pause, that microscopic space between stimulus and response, is where all your power lives. It's the forge where strength is born. And yes, it's hard. Because we want it to be their fault. We want justice, validation, rescue. But emotional freedom doesn't live in the hands of others. It begins the moment you decide to stop waiting for rescue and start becoming your own protector. This isn't about denial. The Stoic doesn't pretend wounds don't hurt. He just refuses to let them govern who he becomes. You were judged, feel it, then walk through it. You were abandoned, mourn it, then rise anyway. You were insulted, hear it, then decide whether it deserves space in your soul. Most of the pain we carry isn't from the event itself, but from the narrative we attach to it. They left because I wasn't enough. They insulted me because I am weak. But that's just one interpretation. The Stoic asks, what interpretation will serve my growth? Epictetus reminds us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That's not a mantra, it's a daily practice. You train your mind to observe without absorbing, to respond without collapsing, to feel deeply without being ruled by what you feel. You are not your emotions. You are the one deciding what they become. Anger can become clarity. Sadness can become compassion. Rejection can become redirection, but only if you take the wheel back. Only if you stop pointing fingers and start planting your feet. Radical responsibility means this. Everything that enters your mind, every thought, every feeling, every impulse is yours to manage. You don't get to control the world, but you do get to curate your internal landscape. And when you realize that, blame starts to dissolve. It's no longer about who started the fire. It's about whether you keep feeding it or choose to put it out. There's a strange freedom in that, a steadying kind of strength. You're no longer waiting for people to change for you to feel safe. You're no longer giving your peace away in exchange for attention or apology. You're no longer reacting to the world. You're responding from something deeper. And when that becomes your way of life, emotional invincibility isn't a theory, it's a felt reality. The world will still test you. People will still misunderstand, betray, criticize. But you won't flinch. Because you've built your power on something untouchable, the space between what happens and who you choose to be. So ask yourself now, what are you still blaming? Who are you still waiting on to make you feel whole, seen, safe? And what would your life look like if you stopped waiting and started owning? That question isn't just a shift. It's the doorway to a new kind of life, one where your calm is earned, your clarity is chosen, and your identity is built from the inside out. And from that place of quiet authorship, you realize something simple but life-changing. You don't owe the world a reaction. You owe yourself peace. And the deeper that peace runs, the less the noise around you can touch the truth within you. So take these Stoic principles and let them settle into your way of being, not as a shield to keep the world out, but as a compass that guides you inward. Speak with intention, act with clarity, feel deeply, but choose your response with wisdom. You don't need to be louder to be stronger. You don't need to be understood to be at peace. What you need is to be rooted so deeply that nothing outside you can pull you off center. This isn't about pretending life doesn't hurt. It's about no longer being ruled by the pain. It's about stepping out of old patterns, needing to explain, needing to be liked, needing the world to make sense, and stepping into something quieter but infinitely more powerful. You begin to choose when to speak and when to stay still, when to let go and when to hold the line, when to walk away not out of defeat but from strength. If this message stirred something in you, let that be your signal. Don't rush back to the noise. Sit with it. Let it shape the way you move next, because the strongest version of you isn't the one who always reacts. It's the one who sees clearly, who stands calmly, who remains inwardly steady while the world shifts around them. If there was a principle here that truly hit home, type "choose stillness" in the comments. Let that be your quiet reminder going forward. And if this kind of depth speaks to you, feel free to subscribe. Not to follow noise, but to keep learning how to return to your center again and again. Your peace is not a performance, it is a practice. And you are already becoming the kind of person who doesn't just survive storms, but learns to stand calmly within them. Have you ever felt like you're falling behind, not because you're lazy, but because your mind feels scattered? You try to focus, to think clearly, but the noise around you and the weight of self-doubt keep pulling you off course. Maybe you've looked at others and thought, they're just naturally smarter, quicker, sharper, and maybe a part of you believed that. But what if intelligence isn't some rare gift you either have or don't? What if it's a craft, a discipline that you can train? The Stoics believed just that. To them, the sharpest minds weren't always the loudest or the fastest, but the ones that knew how to filter the noise, sit with discomfort, and direct their attention like a blade. You don't need to memorize facts or win arguments. You need to know where to look, what to ignore, and how to respond, not react. And those skills, they can be learned. In this video, we'll walk through 15 timeless Stoic lessons, not to help you become a genius, but to help you think with clarity, act with intention, and see through the fog that clouds most minds. If something in you feels ready, even just a little, then stay with me. I think this might be the shift you've been waiting for. Lesson 1. Intelligence is trained. Have you ever looked at someone who seems effortlessly sharp and thought they must have been born that way? Like their mind was wired differently, made for clarity and insight while yours struggles just to keep up. That quiet belief that intelligence is something you're either gifted or not is one of the most dangerous assumptions we carry. And it's not just false, it's self-defeating. The Stoics saw through this illusion long ago. To them, intelligence wasn't a matter of luck, it was a matter of labor. Marcus Aurelius never claimed to be brilliant. He claimed only that he practiced. Seneca didn't preach natural talent, he preached discipline. And Epictetus, once a slave, didn't rise through society because he had a gifted brain. He rose because he trained his mind like a soldier trains his body. Wisdom, in their eyes, wasn't something granted. It was something earned, one question at a time. And the battlefield. It wasn't a school or a debate hall. It was the quiet hours of self-reflection, the discomfort of hard questions, and the strength to sit with doubt instead of running from it. Imagine your mind as a trail through the woods. Every day you walk the same path, the same habits, the same quick reactions, the same tired thoughts. Over time, that path becomes easy, automatic. But easy doesn't mean wise. If you want to grow, you need to blaze a new trail. You'll stumble, you'll trip. But with each step into the unknown, new pathways begin to form. That's not just philosophy, that's neuroscience. Your brain is built to reshape itself when challenged. There was once an old man, 68 years old, who decided to study logic for the first time in his life. His friends laughed, his children rolled their eyes, but every morning he sat in silence with a notebook, breaking apart arguments, questioning ideas, writing down reflections. After a year, he didn't feel smarter, but his temper shortened less often. His conversations became clearer, and most of all, he felt less lost in his own head. Not because he read more, but because he thought better. That's what wisdom looks like. Quiet, patient, steady. You don't need a genius IQ to think clearly. You need practice. You need to write, to reflect, to notice your own reactions and ask why. And above all, you need the courage to admit that most of your thoughts are borrowed from yesterday. The Stoic doesn't worship quick answers. They worship the question that lingers long enough to reshape you. What am I in control of right now? Marcus asked himself this often, not to sound profound, but to remind himself where power truly begins. So, if you've been waiting to feel smart enough to start, don't. Just start. Read one difficult page. Write one honest sentence. Sit with one hard question. Because wisdom isn't granted in grand moments. It's forged in small, consistent choices. And once you've begun that process of reshaping your mind like a Stoic, there's a natural next step. Turn to the one practice that has sharpened minds for thousands of years. Read, but not to pass the time. Read like your survival depends on it. That's where we're headed next. Lesson 2. Read like a Stoic. Have you ever closed a book and realized you don't remember a single thing you just read? Not because it wasn't interesting, but because it never made it past the surface of your mind. It's a quiet frustration many of us carry, the sense that we're consuming more but growing less. We skim, we highlight, we nod, but deep down, we're not changed. The Stoics believed reading was not an act of collection, but of confrontation. Marcus Aurelius didn't read to gather quotes. He read to sharpen his soul. Seneca didn't write to impress. He wrote to remind himself of truths he was still trying to live. To the Stoics, a book wasn't entertainment. It was a mirror, a mentor, a battlefield. You didn't read for speed, you read for depth. You didn't read to know more, you read to become less foolish. Think of how we often read today. A paragraph here, a podcast transcript there. Half a page before bed, half a chapter during lunch. And we call it learning. But wisdom doesn't bloom in clutter. It grows in silence, in space, in the kind of reading that makes you stop and stare at the wall for 5 minutes, just to wrestle with what you've just heard. I once met a man in his 60s who lived on the edge of a small coastal town. No phone, no television. His bookshelf held maybe 30 books. Epictetus, Marcus, a few poets. I asked him why he hadn't read more. He smiled and said, "I don't need more voices. I need fewer, spoken more deeply." He wasn't looking for new information. He was looking for truth that had enough time to take root. Neuroscience confirms what the Stoics sensed. When you truly engage with an idea, link it to memory, emotion, reflection, your brain changes. New pathways form. Your lens sharpens. Reading is not just input, it's transformation. But that only happens when you let the book challenge you, sit with you, question you, not when you race to finish it. If you want to grow smarter, stop asking how many books to read this year. Ask instead, how many ideas have I lived with long enough to let them shape me? Have I ever let a single sentence change the way I react to people? Have I read not to win arguments, but to lose illusions? Try this. Read one short paragraph, then close the book. Ask yourself, what did this stir in me? What felt unfamiliar? What did I resist? Write about that. Not to summarize, but to see yourself more clearly. Over time, you won't just read differently. You'll think differently. And more importantly, you'll live with more clarity. Because wisdom doesn't come from knowing more, it comes from needing less. Less noise, less ego, less urgency. The purpose of reading to the Stoics was never to impress others, but to humble yourself. And once you've begun reading like that, with stillness, with sincerity, there's only one way to deepen the transformation. You must act. And nothing refines the mind more than stepping into something new. That's where we'll go next. Not toward more knowledge, but toward the sharpening power of skill. Lesson 3. Learn something new. Have you ever felt the quiet shame of being bad at something new? That moment when you try to learn a new skill, an instrument, a language, a craft, and suddenly you're clumsy again. Your hands don't respond, your mind goes blank, and your ego whispers, "This isn't for you." So you put it down. You say you're too busy. But deep down, you know it's fear. Fear of being a beginner again. The Stoics had a name for this: complacency. Not the loud kind, but the soft, seductive kind. The one that tells you you're already doing enough. That staying in familiar territory is the wise choice. But wisdom to a Stoic was never found in comfort. As Seneca put it, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. And that means returning over and over to the discomfort of not knowing. Intelligence doesn't fade because we age. It fades because we stop seeking, we stop stumbling, we grow addicted to being good at what we do, and slowly forget what it feels like to struggle, to stretch, to fail with curiosity. But learning a new skill, a real skill, not just scrolling a new fact, forces the mind to rewire, to bend, adapt, and grow. I knew a surgeon once who, after decades in the operating room, took up woodworking. He was terrible at it at first. His hands, so precise in the hospital, fumbled with saws and chisels. But after months of quiet practice, something changed, not just in his craft, but in his thinking. He said to me, "It taught me patience again, the kind I forgot I needed. It reminded me that precision is nothing without presence." He didn't just learn to shape wood. He reshaped how he showed up, in the hospital, with his family, with himself. That's what learning does when done for its own sake. It expands the soul. When you step into a new discipline, something strange and powerful happens. Your old habits of thought begin to loosen. You see connections where there were none. The chef who picks up painting starts plating food differently. The writer who studies architecture begins to structure paragraphs like blueprints. You stop seeing the world in categories and start seeing it in patterns. This isn't about becoming an expert in everything. It's about becoming a student again, humble, alert, alive. And in that state, intelligence doesn't just grow, it transforms. You become less certain, but more clear. Less rigid, but more grounded. The Stoics weren't interested in mastery for status. They were interested in mastery of self. And the best way to train the mind, they knew, was to keep it moving, stretching, learning. So if you've been circling the edge of something new, curious, hesitant, unsure, consider this your sign. Dive in, fumble, ask dumb questions, laugh at your awkwardness. And then keep going, because the next step on this path to wisdom isn't about collecting more, it's about stripping away. And nothing strips the ego like learning something that humbles you from the start. Next, we'll explore the Stoic secret to clarity, not through gaining more, but by deliberately subtracting what clouds the mind. Lesson 4. Embrace the beginner. Have you ever given up on something not because it was impossible, but because it made you feel foolish? Maybe it was a new language, a new instrument, or even a new job. The moment it got hard, you didn't say, "This is a challenge." You said, "Maybe I'm just not good at this." That quiet, internal narrative, the one that defines effort as failure, is what the Stoics warned us about. Not because struggle is painful, but because how we respond to it reveals everything about how we see ourselves. The Stoics didn't chase brilliance, they chased clarity. Epictetus reminded us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When you struggle to learn something new, the lesson isn't just in the material, it's in how you interpret the difficulty. Do you get frustrated? Do you withdraw? Or do you pause and say, "This is the price of growth. I accept it"? I once knew a woman who spent her life as a school administrator. At 52, she decided to learn to play the piano. She wasn't aiming for performance. She just wanted to understand the music that had always stirred her. The first few weeks were brutal. Her fingers stumbled, her rhythm was off, and even the simplest songs sounded like noise. But something shifted, not in her skill, but in her spirit. She said, "Every time I sit down, I remember what it's like to be a student. It makes me more patient with myself and with others." This is the shift the Stoics spoke of, not from ignorance to knowledge, but from ego to humility. A growth mindset, in their terms, wasn't motivational fluff. It was a commitment to truth. Marcus Aurelius himself wrote daily reminders not to expect perfection but to practice patience. He wasn't trying to feel smart. He was trying to stay awake, to avoid the trap of believing he had nothing more to learn. Most people stop learning not because they run out of time, but because they run out of tolerance for being uncomfortable. They choose competence over curiosity. They repeat what they know instead of risking the unknown. But the mind, like the body, decays in stillness. It needs tension, it needs resistance, it needs something to push against. So try something new, not for a resume, not for a prize, but to feel the edges of your mind stretch. Learn how to fold paper into shapes. Study the structure of poetry. Try sketching your thoughts instead of writing them. Let yourself be a beginner again. Because in that awkwardness, your intelligence isn't shrinking, it's awakening. And when you learn to see failure not as a verdict, but as a mirror, when you realize that struggle is just another form of self-discovery, you begin to move through the world with a different kind of clarity. A wisdom that isn't loud or flashy, but quietly resilient. And from that foundation, you're ready to take on one of the deepest transformations of all, changing the story you tell yourself. That's where we go next. Lesson 5. Challenge mental limits. When was the last time you said something about yourself that quietly became a rule? I'm not a creative person. I just don't think that way. This isn't for me. We say these things casually, almost as jokes, but our minds don't laugh. They listen. They update. And over time, those quiet phrases become commands. Not truths, but scripts we follow without question. The Stoics understood the danger of that. They taught that perception is not just how we see the world, it's how we shape our lives. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And if we keep repeating that we're limited, incapable, or fixed, we start to live within walls built entirely by our own words. The mind isn't limited by capacity, it's limited by permission. Imagine your thoughts as fingerprints left on mirrors. Negative self-talk fogs the surface, distorting the reflection until all we can see is the version of ourselves we've rehearsed the most. But if we clean that mirror just a little by changing the way we speak to ourselves, a different image begins to emerge, one with potential, resilience, and sharpness. I once knew a man named Edward, a quiet software engineer who had a strange ritual. Every week he'd taken a small challenge he knew nothing about: baking, origami, calligraphy, even learning to draw with his non-dominant hand. He wasn't doing it for mastery, he was doing it to stay alive inside. He told me once, "My job trains my fingers, but this trains my mind." He failed often, but the failure wasn't discouraging, it was refreshing. It reminded him he was still capable of learning, still capable of growth. That's what it means to challenge your brain. Not through force or pressure, but through daily acts of disruption. Changing a routine, asking a deeper question, doing something awkward on purpose. Not because it's useful, but because it wakes you up. And staying mentally awake in a world addicted to autopilot is a kind of rebellion. It's a Stoic act. Modern psychology calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself through new experience. The Stoics simply called it discipline, a commitment to never letting the mind grow dull through comfort. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality, but when you challenge your mind daily, imagination becomes a tool, not a trap. You build flexibility, perspective, and depth. You train yourself to think before you react." So here's the practice. Each day, shake one fixed idea. Say something to yourself in a better way. Ask, "Is that belief still serving me?" Do something that humbles you, that returns you to the learning state. It might feel small, even silly, but in those moments, intelligence is not just preserved, it's refined. And once you've built this habit of mental motion, you'll notice something else. Information is not enough. Awareness isn't enough. True wisdom begins when you understand your own emotions and master them. That's the next step. Emotional intelligence, the Stoics' most powerful compass in a chaotic world. Lesson 6. Lead with emotional calm. When you picture the wisest person you know, what comes to mind? Probably not someone who speaks the most, or flaunts their intellect, or has a wall of degrees. No, it's usually someone who brings calm into the room. Someone who doesn't overreact, who listens deeply, and whose presence feels grounded no matter the chaos around them. This isn't traditional intelligence, it's something deeper. The Stoics called it mastery of the self. Today we call it emotional intelligence. The Stoics never used that modern phrase, but they lived by it every day. To them, wisdom wasn't about dazzling others with logic. It was about choosing how you respond, especially when your emotions are loudest. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In other words, the greatest freedom is not in controlling others, but in mastering your own inner state. A friend of mine once faced this test at work. She was a manager, respected and capable, but one day, after a failed campaign, her boss lashed out, angry, loud, in front of everyone. The room tensed. Some stared at the floor, others stiffened with silent rage. But she did something unexpected. She said nothing, no defense, no reaction. Later, in private, she calmly explained the error, owned it, and offered a path forward. A week later, the project was revived. Her boss told her, "It was your calm that made me listen." That's emotional intelligence in action. The ability to feel without letting those feelings drive you off course. In fact, most of the pain we feel each day isn't from what happens to us. It's from how we respond. A snide comment, a moment of being overlooked, a perceived insult. These don't destroy us. It's our stories about them that do. Daniel Goleman describes emotional intelligence through 5 key elements: self-awareness, self-regulation, intrinsic motivation, empathy, and social skill. Every one of them reflects a Stoic truth. The Stoics journaled to understand their emotions. They practiced restraint, not as suppression, but as choice. They acted on principle, not praise. They tried to see others not as enemies, but as fellow travelers. And they spoke only when words could serve peace, not ego. Try it for yourself. The next time something triggers you, pause. Write down how you feel. Sit with it for 10 minutes. You'll notice the intensity fade, and in that space, a better version of yourself begins to speak. That's not weakness. That's strength with depth. A quiet strength. And once you've cultivated that emotional stillness, you'll start to notice something remarkable. Your thoughts become clearer, your choices more intentional. Your inner voice, once muffled by reactivity, becomes sharp and steady. And from that place of clarity, the next question naturally arises. What are you feeding this mind you're working so hard to refine? That's where we go next, into the surprisingly Stoic link between wisdom and nutrition. Lesson 7. Eat for mental clarity. Have you ever tried to focus only to feel like your brain was wrapped in fog? You sit down to work, to read, to think, but the sharpness isn't there. You're not tired, not distracted, just dull. It's easy to blame stress or lack of motivation. But what if the real reason isn't in your mind, but in your stomach? We often speak of intelligence like it floats above the body, like our brain operates in a vacuum of thought. But the Stoics knew better. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that we are not minds alone, we are unified beings. Thought, breath, body, spirit. And what you feed your body feeds your mind. Want clarity? Start with your next bite. Most people treat food as either comfort or afterthought, a way to soothe emotions or simply get through the day. But rarely do we ask, what is this doing to my ability to think? If you fill your tank with processed food, sugar, chemical-laced snacks, don't be surprised when your thoughts feel scattered, your emotions unstable, and your decisions clouded. I once met a man named Harold, a retired teacher, who had studied Stoic philosophy for decades. He told me, I understood Epictetus better after I changed my breakfast. When I asked what he meant, he said, it's simple. Before, I couldn't even finish a paragraph before dozing off. Now, I wake up early, eat clean, and I actually hear the words. The wisdom didn't change. He did. You don't need a perfect diet to feel the shift. You need intentional choices. A handful of almonds instead of chips. A glass of water before the morning coffee. Green tea with L-theanine to stay sharp but grounded. Omega-3s from salmon or walnuts to support focus and memory. These aren't health trends, they're philosophical tools. Tools for awareness. Modern science calls this the gut-brain axis. The Stoics would have called it living in alignment with nature. Your clarity is not separate from your discipline, and your discipline begins with what you allow through your lips. You don't need to overhaul your life. Just begin tomorrow. Add one thing that honors your mind. Picture each meal as a step toward the person you say you want to become. Eat like someone who values their presence, who shows up clear, calm, and composed. And if you feel a shift, even a small one, drop a comment below with the word clarity. Let me know you're walking this path too. And if this reflection speaks to you, hit subscribe and stay with us on this journey of sharpening the mind through ancient wisdom and modern practice. Because once your body starts to support your thoughts, something beautiful happens. You begin to listen, not just inwardly, but outwardly. You become less reactive, more attentive. And that, right there, is the beginning of something deeper, learning not just to understand yourself, but to understand others. And that's exactly where we go next. Lesson 8. Sharpen through dialogue. Have you ever walked away from a conversation not feeling victorious, but deeply moved because someone said something that made you pause and question your own certainty? Not out of arrogance or opposition, but out of genuine curiosity. Those moments, though rare, are the ones that leave a mark. Because it's in those moments that we stop defending and start understanding. And that's when real thinking begins. We often imagine the path to wisdom as a solo journey. But the Stoics knew otherwise. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, once wrote, "If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after." That wasn't weakness. That was strength, the strength of a man powerful enough to welcome challenge without ego. The Stoics saw every conversation, every disagreement, not as a threat, but as raw material. Material to polish the mind, refine logic, and cultivate humility. They understood that surrounding yourself only with people who agree with you is like staring into a mirror and mistaking it for the world. You shine, yes, but only in your own reflection. I once met a philosophy professor who shared his favorite teaching method. He'd pair students who disagreed on almost everything and ask them to defend each other's views for an entire hour. By the end, he said, they're not always convinced, but they're always changed. That's what true dialogue does. It doesn't force agreement. It stretches perception. It reveals blind spots. And often, it's the only thing that can tame intellectual arrogance. Ironically, the smarter we become, the more we need to be challenged. Because intelligence without humility is a dangerous illusion. It convinces us we've already arrived. It resists opposing views, not because they're wrong, but because they threaten the comfortable narrative we've built. And here, the Stoic mindset becomes essential. Not to crush opposition, but to remain still in its presence. To ask, why does this bother me? What am I defending? What if I'm wrong? Real dialogue asks you to sit in that discomfort, to not answer right away, to not win, just to listen. Because when the goal isn't victory but clarity, two opposing minds can shape each other without losing themselves. That's not weakness. That's mutual sharpening. As Proverbs says, iron sharpens iron, not through softness but through contact, friction, challenge, a little heat. And no, this doesn't require a debate stage or a conference panel. It can happen around a dinner table, during a walk, or in a quiet message thread. All it takes is the courage to ask, what do you think? And the humility to mean it. So if your ideas haven't been tested in a while, maybe it's time to seek the friction. Step into a conversation that unsettles you, not to change your mind, but to stretch it. Because as we'll explore in the next lesson, discomfort, far from being something to avoid, is often the doorway to real growth. And if you're willing to walk through it, you'll find that the mind becomes sharper, not in stillness, but in motion. Lesson 9. Use discomfort to grow. Think about the last time you truly changed, when you became more honest, more thoughtful, more grounded. Did it happen on a peaceful afternoon with everything in its place? Probably not. Most transformations don't arrive during calm mornings with coffee and gentle music. They come after the storm, in the middle of a failure, in the echo of a rejection, in the silence that follows a hard truth. Discomfort, though unpleasant, is often the birthplace of clarity. The Stoics didn't seek pain, but they didn't avoid it either. Seneca once said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." To them, discomfort was a signal, not to stop, but to pay attention. To sit with what feels sharp, confusing, or unfamiliar. Because that's where your mental edge is sharpened. Imagine someone trying to learn a new language. At first, their tongue fumbles, their brain aches, grammar feels like chaos. But that chaos is the exact space where growth starts. It's not failure, it's friction, and without it, nothing changes. Neuroscience calls this desirable difficulty, the sweet spot where the mind is stretched, challenged, but not broken. A friend of mine once decided to take up public speaking in his 40s. The first time he stood on stage, his voice cracked, his palms sweated, and he forgot his lines. But afterward he told me that 5 minutes of panic taught me more than 5 years of silent learning. He didn't become fearless. He became familiar with fear. And that familiarity changed how he moved through the world. Marcus Aurelius, writing in the heat of war and illness, didn't ask for ease. He asked for clarity through struggle. If this is happening, then it must be useful to me. That's not resignation. That's perspective. The Stoic doesn't ask how to escape discomfort. They ask what it can teach them and whether they're willing to endure long enough to find out. But not all discomfort is virtuous. There's the kind that breaks you and the kind that builds you. Staying in a toxic job or a depleting relationship isn't growth, it's erosion. The Stoic wisdom lies in discernment, to know when to push through and when to walk away. One sharpens, the other dulls. Try this. At the end of today, write down 3 moments that unsettled you. Then ask, why did that get to me? What belief did it challenge? That simple practice doesn't just help you react better next time, it helps you know yourself more honestly. And knowing yourself is the cornerstone of wisdom. The truth is, comfort rarely pushes us forward. It lulls us. It tempts us into routine, into intellectual sleep. But discomfort, it wakes us. It invites us to grow beyond who we were yesterday, not dramatically but deliberately. And when the mind becomes strong enough to stand in discomfort, it's time for the body to follow. Because the next lesson doesn't begin in thought, it begins in motion. Lesson 10. Move to think clearly. Picture a mind full of potential, quick, insightful, creative, but trapped inside a body that's tired, stiff, and heavy with neglect. It's like owning a finely tuned instrument and leaving it unstrung in a dusty corner. We forget that the body is not separate from the mind. It is the vessel through which clarity moves, the frame that holds the sharpness of thought. Seneca once said, "The body should be treated more rigorously, that it may not be disobedient to the mind." And in that single line lies a truth modern science is only now beginning to echo. The Stoics understood something we often overlook. A sluggish body dulls the spirit. Today, we sit more than ever, scrolling, thinking, planning, but rarely moving. We chase mental breakthroughs in books and screens, but overlook the ground beneath our feet. The irony. Movement itself is one of the greatest tools for mental clarity. A 10-minute walk, a few squats, a round of deep breathing, these aren't just acts of fitness, they're forms of remembering. Jack, a software engineer in his late 30s, used to be known for his razor-sharp mind. But over time, his thoughts grew cloudy. He still read, still worked hard, but something was missing. Until one day, in the middle of a failed presentation, he froze, blank, panicked. He didn't go home. He went to the gym. 3 crunches winded him. A slow jog felt impossible. But he came back. Each day, bit by bit, his mind reawakened, not from caffeine or self-help books, but from sweat, breath, and physical struggle. "I don't work out to stay fit," he told me later. I work out to think straight. There's a reason. Movement increases oxygen to the brain, reduces cortisol, and stimulates neurogenesis, the growth of new brain cells. It's not philosophy, it's physiology. Just as Epictetus reminded us, it's not things that disturb us, but our opinions about them. The body too has opinions, and when neglected, it speaks in foggy thoughts, low moods, and waning energy. A sharp mind cannot survive in a body that's constantly exhausted or inflamed. You don't need a personal trainer or a gym membership. Just begin where you are. Stretch in the morning before touching your phone. Walk around the block after lunch. Stand, breathe, move. Action first. Motivation follows. Don't wait to feel ready. Act, and readiness will catch up. The Stoics taught that discipline brings freedom, and your first discipline. Treat your body not as a burden, but as a sacred vessel. Not to look better, but to think clearer. And when that clarity comes, something else awakens. A sensitivity to beauty, to rhythm, to inspiration. Which leads us to the next lesson. How art, music, and creativity unlock dimensions of thought no logic ever could. Lesson 11. Let art refine you. Have you ever heard a melody that stopped you mid-thought, not because it made sense, but because it made you feel, or stared at a painting you couldn't explain, yet something about it lingered long after? These moments don't arrive with clarity. They arrive with silence. And in that silence, something profound stirs. Not just emotion, but a different kind of intelligence. One that doesn't solve, but sees. One that doesn't rush, but listens. The modern world, so obsessed with speed, clarity, and control, has little room for this softer form of wisdom. Yet it's in precisely these quiet moments that the Stoics found their greatest strength. Epictetus reminded us, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. But beyond dialogue, he was pointing to a deeper state of receptivity. A mind that is calm enough to listen, not only to people, but to art, to nature, to the emotions that rise when logic falls short. Art doesn't teach like a textbook. It doesn't give you answers. It makes space for better questions. That's why creativity often flows after music, not meetings. After stillness, not stimulation. Consider Albert Einstein, who turned to his violin when physics problems became too complex. It wasn't about escaping thought. It was about resetting the terrain where thought takes place. Likewise, Winston Churchill painted during war, not as a hobby, but as a way to steady the turbulence within. I once knew a quiet high school teacher who kept a piano in the back of her classroom. No one ever heard her play, but once during lunch I passed by and heard the faint sound of a slow, simple tune. She later told me, "It's how I remember who I am before I speak to 30 students at once." That small act, playing music not for performance but for presence, is a window into this deeper intelligence, the kind that stays grounded when noise rises. The kind that makes decisions not just with the mind, but with the whole being. The Stoics weren't artists by trade, but they were deeply in tune with beauty. Marcus Aurelius often spoke of the rhythm in nature, the way a vine curls, the way a horse gallops. To him, observing those details wasn't idle, it was training. Training the mind to notice, to admire, to align with the order of things rather than force them. If you want to begin, you don't need to paint like a master or understand classical music. Just listen to something unfamiliar. Let it move you, even if you don't know why. Draw something, even badly. Let the chaos on the page reveal what your thoughts couldn't say. Because art doesn't require talent. It requires openness. And from that openness comes a shift. You no longer push your intelligence outward. You let it unfold inward, gently, quietly, fully. And with that, the mind becomes ready for the next step, not learning more, but finally applying what it knows. Not with effort, but with flow. Lesson 12. Apply wisdom immediately. Have you ever stood in front of a bookshelf filled with wisdom and felt no wiser? It's a strange contradiction, knowing more but changing nothing. We live in a time where knowledge is everywhere, yet transformation is rare. Not because we don't have access to truth, but because we mistake collecting ideas for living them. The truth is, wisdom isn't measured by how much you know, but by how quickly you apply what you already do. Epictetus didn't mince words. Don't explain your philosophy, he said. Embody it. He didn't care if you could recite his teachings. He cared about how you treated your neighbor when you were tired, how you carried yourself when insulted, whether you could choose calm when your entire body screamed to react. That's the real test. Not what you've read, but what remains standing when life becomes unsteady. I once met a young woman who had read every major book on Stoicism. Her bookshelf was impressive. She quoted Marcus Aurelius from memory, annotated Seneca's letters, even taught workshops on inner peace. But one day, she told me a story that changed how she saw everything. After receiving a scathing message from a friend, she sat down, fingers trembling, ready to respond with fire. But something made her stop. She remembered a line she'd highlighted months ago. Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. She closed her laptop, walked outside, and let the emotion pass. Hours later, she replied, not with defense, but with clarity. And the conversation, rather than collapsing, turned into healing. That was the moment her knowledge became real. It wasn't dramatic, no applause, no audience, just a quiet decision to act differently. And that's how most wisdom appears, not in grand gestures, but in silent shifts, in choosing not to gossip, in walking away from petty arguments, in pausing before reacting. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, likely faced more daily pressure than any modern leader, yet his journal isn't filled with commands or conquests. It's filled with reminders. Be patient, be humble, return to the present. These aren't lessons for the battlefield. They're lessons for the mind, and they're only powerful if practiced. So ask yourself, how much of what you've consumed today will actually shape how you behave tomorrow? That's the line between information and transformation, between a bookshelf and a life, between a student of philosophy and a Stoic in motion. And once you begin to close that gap, you'll notice something else. The speed of application becomes the measure of your inner strength. That's where we turn next. Learning to respond,